Every startup leadership hire falls into one of 4 categories. Subtractors drain energy. Adders get the job done. Dividers create silos, but only multipliers drive impact and growth. If you're not hiring for impact, you're playing startup hiring roulette. Want to find out who's on your team? Take the multiplier scorecard.
I think there's no other option but to do outbound. Like you're talking about keeping your teeth sharp. I mean, there's a point when you need to like call, scream uncle and try something different along the way and change your strategy. But you can never, as a salesperson or as a leader, give up on outbound. It always needs to be a core skill for you as a professional at any point in time. Because ultimately, the number's going to fall on you, and you're going to need to have an answer for it. And if you've missed your number as a rep or as a leader, and you are absolutely doing everything you can, which always includes the things that are controllable and that is in your control. Outbound is always in your control when you are in sales, when you're in a go-to-market function. There's like no purpose in complaining about marketing or what other people have not done for you. What have you done for yourself? How have you gone out and done that? What kind of personal discipline do you have? When you lack that, you lack any kind of backup to say, like, I've done everything possible and no one else could have done more. If you're a leader at a company and, the average tenure for a VP of sales is pretty short. Yeah. It's because if you're not even in the trenches, if your team's not doing that stuff, you can't back that up. Number 2, I think on it is it comes down to discipline. Once a team stops doing outbound, they're not disciplined. Plain and simple. Like there's no accountability in there. And it doesn't need to be every day. You don't need to discipline is not next step notes in your Salesforce opportunities, guys. That's just not discipline. Discipline is going out in there, whatever that outbound motion looks like. And I'm happy. I've always given my reps, I'm like, dude, if you think going out on the road with business cards and going door to door, go old school, have the old ideas be better again, works for you. Go do it. Going to shows? Absolutely. Go out and schedule 10, 15 cold call drop-ins if that's going to be it. And that's more effective for you to generate qualified opportunities than to make 100 outbound dials. All that stuff, totally great. But you need to be disciplined. We need to hold ourselves to the standard, no matter what else is going on in the economy. If it's a recession, if the other teams are doing crappy, the board number, this, that, or the other. And if for any other reason, even if you think this isn't the sales job for you forever, you go get the dream sales job and you go there and they actually hustle. Like it's going to be real hard to go from I don't run to I'm running a marathon tomorrow.
That's amazing. Because you talked about that, obviously waking up at 5 a.m. and going for your runs. And I know that we were talking in the green room before when we first spoke about the fact that you're doing trail running and, running up 2K incline against 16-year-olds. So you've built that discipline yourself. And I totally understand it. If I don't go for a run, I start to feel mentally quite cloudy and I get fat. And I struggle every I'm being serious. Like I can see it in my face, like genuinely. Yeah. I'm not even talking about like mentally. I'm talking about physically fat.
Yeah. I'm very aware of the same problem.
These things stack up really quickly around you because it is a habit that if you allow it to be a negotiable, i.e., it's something I do to fill in a gap plan. It's like something I do to make up a number rather than this is a fundamental thing. I do not leave the office until I've made that many dials. I do not, go and do this activity, which is maybe like a nicer thing to go and do until I've gone and done those dials. I was just wondering what's your view, your mentality towards baking into your reps' culture and their DNA, this non-negotiable behavior that they show up and show that discipline around outbound.
Yeah, I think it has to be something that the team agrees on and that you have to come together as a group and decide to be this way versus enforce this way. Every team that I've ever been a part of has had some goofy name. At Idelic, the sales team were the Ducks, were the Mighty Ducks. The classic story from the 90s.
Flying V.
Yeah. Flying V. We've been selling into trucking and transportation during a recession. Very difficult stuff. And like you start to build that identity along the way. So we brought in a book club. Jocko Willink, wonderful author, whatever, Command Forces for the United States military, his book Discipline. And we just did our SKO a couple weeks back. And the team decided what their discipline was. All right, how are we going to act and how are we going to hold each other accountable? And when it's their idea, they came up with it and they gave me permission as well as their peers to give them crap when they're not doing it, as well as me. If they see me not doing it, call me up. Like, I'm not above being called out as a leader. You should feel comfortable to call me on my crap when I'm not holding myself to that. Because if I'm not, they're for sure not. If I'm skating out of the office early, they're leaving the second they see, in the old days, the car pulls out of the parking lot, they're all peeling out.
Yeah.
But when the team decides how they're going to function, what their culture is, and that is always rooted in discipline in sales, because that is what it does ultimately come down to. Then they opt into it, and it's a lot easier than just enforcing it and trying to be a tyrant, which just doesn't work.
I love that. You've touched on a few incredibly powerful things there. One about identity. When I joined my old CEO, who's an absolute master in all things NLP, as well as just being a world-class entrepreneur, we were looking to improve the feedback culture within the business because people were getting quite defensive or shirking the responsibility to actually go and give people corrective feedback that was going to help them, like being kind to be soft, which just never works. And he talks about how you can't make a change until someone at an identity level wants to be that person. You can't change someone's identity and the way that they see the world. And that's not only true for individuals, it's true for teams. So the fact that you created this environment where teams are creating an identity, they're creating their set of values and their principles, and what happens if we don't live up to those things, I would imagine that becomes an incredibly attractive place for the right people to join your business. So I'm just wondering, when you're building this identity, how are you using that to become attractive and to select people to join your team from outside?
Yeah. I think when your team is doing really well, and you're trying to attract outside talent, you're gonna hire the right people 80% more of the time because you're not going to be in a desperation mode. Same principles will fall in line where your team, whether it's a team lead or one or two people on your team, are going to interview them. And if they don't think they're A players, that they're going to fit in and make the team better, not cronies, right? Because you can fall into crony world pretty easy. Like, they're just going to, look like Chris, have a beard and run at 5 a.m. Like, we're not hiring everybody who's like that, right? We want to hire people who make us better as a group. And you're going to attract those people into the business. And when they hear the kind of standard that you have, the kind of discipline that you bring in, and again, I'm not like, you're not on Slack at 7:30, like I'm calling your cell phone. I'm not doing that kind of stuff. We're adults.
Yeah.
Like my guys have, they have children and stuff, so I'm not doing like, it's also comfortable. There's also a good, healthy work-life balance along the way. I will say, just to self-promote myself there in the right light. People who don't want to work hard or who are afraid of that or who know that they're not ready for it will automatically select out along the way. Yeah. I'd say, just as a caveat to that, in the pandemic world, if you're hiring a highly paid professional to be either a senior mid-market or an enterprise salesperson, get on a plane or get them on a plane and meet them in person. And I'd say 99% of the hires that I've made a mistake on, I would not have hired if I'd have met them in person first. And they might have even self-selected out. I think that's incredibly important. They'll also see that, like, I'm a short guy and I'm pretty normal, and you look very different over a Zoom, Yeah. But I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, I agree. We make it a fundamental part of our process that people meet in person. For all of those reasons, you get a completely different steer. I remember hiring people remotely from Germany when we ran like an outsourced go-to-market agency, and we'd do it on a phone call. And then some people turned up and you were like, what on earth? They changed country. But I really like that. I've got a principle a model, very simple way of describing recruitment. I'll just see if it lands with you. So here's how I talk about recruitment with clients to help sure we've got like a common language. So recruitment's very simple, not easy, but simple. There are 4 types of people you can hire: adders,
Right.
subtractors, multipliers, and dividers. So you've got adders, who are your like steady ship, we're just going to make sure things happen, really steady, but they're not going to revolutionize your business, not innovate, not really question too deeply, just make stuff happen. Subtractors, wrong hire, low skill, low will, low effort, low alignment. Get them out. Dividers, highly intelligent people, often highly skilled. Maybe they got promoted a bit too far and they start to lose the alignment. Maybe you've mismanaged them. They lose the alignment and they start to divide and conquer and create their own factions. And then you get the multipliers, who is, you could call it the star or the A player, but they multiply everyone else's impact with their energy, with their drive, with the innovation, the ownership, the challenging that they bring to the team. And what I realized is that multipliers want to work with multipliers. And they're such good people that if you don't manage them in the right way, they can become dividers, or they could become even worse, which is a multiplier who tries to pick up the work of the other people in the team.
Interesting.
And they're going to burn out super quickly.
Yep.
So this idea that you would create this environment where the multipliers are just doing such a good job that other people would be attracted to that might be because they've come from an environment where they're sick of picking up the slack of some dividers and subtractors. And they just want to work with elite people who are going to go and push them forward, and with a manager that's going to go and get the best from them. And I'd just love to hear what you think about that.
I absolutely agree with that. I'll use something that fits into this bucket is when I worked early days at Samsara, everyone there was over quota. And we all hired people from Meraki who everyone was over quota by a substantial margin. Their philosophy was to have the majority very far over quota. And thus we would interview individuals from outside of that sphere. And if they didn't immediately say that they were over quota and fit this certain like on paper bucket, we would immediately dismiss them. And I think what we ended up doing, this is my philosophy, thinking this through live with you, is I think we ended up with a lot of dividers who came into the organization, and even worse, subtractors who on paper hit their number at a company where everybody was hitting their number or lying on their number with good backup. How many people have I interviewed have actually told me that they consistently missed their quota? Out of the thousands of interviews, almost none. I don't know, maybe a handful out of thousands. But what I found was the most impactful and powerful was I wanted somebody who had gone through, didn't have to live in adversity. I didn't want somebody who had a fatalist or a scarcity mindset. Show me somebody who actually, you said, they were already carrying the load. Some of my best hires were in very tough companies where I was like, yeah, I did 90% of quota for 3 years, but I was number 1 in the company. That's a whole different mindset. Because as a sales rep, if you don't hit 100%, you've in your mind failed. But to be number 1 in that position means you're carrying the weight in a lot of other places. And you just if you put that person in an environment, in a place where they can actually thrive and still be that wonderful, helpful multiplier individual, they will thrive.
Thank you for listening and watching this Best Bits short. If you like this, tune in next Sunday for our next special part of our favorite episodes. And if you love the main podcast, every Thursday we introduce you to a new virtual mentor so you can hear their career story and answers to the biggest questions in tech. See you on the next episode.